Clif High, you haven't had your blood test lately?
That's quite true. I haven't had blood drawn for, well, no, that's not, I had a small surgery a few years back, and they sucked some of the red stuff out of me then. Yeah.
See, I'm psychic, and so maybe you could hire me.
Great. Just what we need, more accuracy. It's scary enough as it is. There is only one sin in forecasting the future.
What is that?
It's accuracy.
Is it accuracy? Yeah.
If you read in things like, just because I'm in this line of work, I have done a historical account and checked a few things out, and some of the even more recent ones, like Mao Zedong took his son after he just conquered China, that is to say they were in the process of, kicking Chiang Kai-shek into Taiwan and cleaning up some of the other rebellious provinces when he was taking over after the Long March in the 20s and the 30s. And he's got China pretty much in his grasp, and he takes his son to a public square near Beijing, not actually in Beijing, but in a town outside of the area there. And he tells his son, have a look around here, because here were all of the people we would think of as like Conscious Life Expo kind of exhibitors, fortune tellers, fast food vendors and this kind of thing, right? But he tells his son, look now, because this will be gone forever. And to humor his son, they go on over to a Taoist fortune teller who tells him, who does the I Ching thing for him, and then says, nope, not going to tell you what it is. And also Mao gets a little freaked out, and he starts getting irritated, and he says to the guy, you will tell me. And he says, no, I will not, but I will tell you two things. 8341, and that's as far as I go, and if you want to kill me, that's fine. And then they just disbanded it and everything, and shut down and made it illegal. They even banned my site in China because it promotes superstition.
Oh.
And that's the law under which all of this was banned, was the promotion of superstition. But the 8341 turned out to be quite accurate. Mao went back to Beijing and named his private personal bodyguard regiment in the Chinese Red Army 8341 without knowing what it was. And it was the year of his death would be his 83rd year, and he would rule China for 41 years.
Yeah, very interesting. Clif's site is halfpasthuman.com. Clif High is with us. It's a few minutes after 10, and it's an honor to be here with you. 888-663-6386 if you care to participate. 888-663-6386. And emails are fair. We already have a stack of them. You have a fan club, and they will ask Clif High some questions by email. You will. Patrick at oneradionetwork.com. We have new listeners all the time. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly is it you do, George. George, yours says, like you sit at the kitchen table and you stare at a plate of tea leaves. And that's pretty fancy. You get $10 for these reports. So, you're an entrepreneur, man.
Right. No, it's not quite that simple. I wish it was the case. There was only, a kitchen table and a bowl full of tea required. Now we've got a server farm and vast quantities of bandwidth and a bunch of RAID arrays to store our data, and I run a couple of SQL servers. And what we do is we go out and basically consume vast quantities of public text on the Internet, and we watch for the changes in language from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis around the same subjects. So as long as people are discussing bread making, if all of a sudden the words they use to discuss bread making change, those have a tie back to a lexicon and allow us to do a forecast based on the archetypes that the words bring along with them.
You can tell me how many people are going to make bread in 2011?
No, because we don't count that kind of stuff. But we do know, for instance, that since 1999, there's been a huge upsurge in people wishing to deal with things what we call from scratch. And it's a counter trend to the big pharma, big food chains, etc. And it's gaining strength. And the kinds of things we count, we know that since 1999 and this year, so 11 years, we've had over 10,000% increase in objects being discussed relative to making food from scratch.
Very interesting. So your contention then that what we think, Clif High, what we talk about, the way we write things, what words we use, are actually predictive indicators of what's going to happen because each individual soul doing the speaking is actually part of the creation?
Correct, and we're all psychic, and it leaks out. You can't help it.
It just leaks.
It leaks, and it happens all the time to everybody on a personal level, and whether you're aware of it or not. So many people are. They know that, nope, don't feel like getting on that elevator, so they don't get on the elevator, and it gets stuck or something, Those kind of things happen continuously. You're about to go through an intersection, and you just stop and hang around for an instant. All of a sudden, car goes through, and it would have been a wreck. Those are more dramatic. But it happens even on a smaller level. You go to reach for the phone and you know who it is even before you see the caller ID. Or you go out to the post office and you say, your mailbox, and you say, Aunt Georgia is going to send me I'm going to get a letter from her today. And sure enough. So those kind of leaks happen continuously at a low level within the language choices we make on a day-to-day basis. And we've been doing this since about 97 when we did our first run. So we're getting pretty good at picking up those differences.
Mm-hmm. It's often said that for those who don't study the past, they're, whatever the line is.
Doomed to repeat it.
They're doomed to repeat it. So it's very interesting how humans, the way we're set up, we tend to do things over again.
Sure, we're entirely creatures of pattern. And in fact, an allegory to that is the Buddhists have a saying, it's, that when you recognize the pattern, then you can step out of it. But most people, in fact, are walking through, I'd have to say they walk through lives very much like something out of a zombie movie, not really paying attention to the environment, locked into their own little zombie world, and we're still getting useful information out of them continuously because that's where a lot of the leaks come through, but they're totally unaware of their participation in universe at any grander scale.
888-663-6386. If you're on hold right now, please, we'll just answer you live on the air. And so stay right there, listen on the phone, and turn your computer down. 888-663-6386. What's your first name? Where are you calling from? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. You're on the air with Clif. Hi, good morning.
Oh, very cool. Good morning to you. I have two questions for Clif, if that's okay.
That's okay.
All right. First question I have is, where do you think the best places in North America to be during the cataclysm, I guess it would be?
You probably get this question about once a day, Clif.
I do. And my standard reply is, I'm sorry, I'm not a travel agent. And a future travel agent is what we really need. And here's the issue. There is no sure and certain place on the planet for any given individual because every individual's destiny is their own. So you and your brother can both move to solid bedrock in, someplace in Canada, and it doesn't shift, but you get struck on the head by an errant fir cone flung by a squirrel from 200 feet up, and you're in a coma, and your brother's fine. But if you'd stayed in Denver, you might have gotten your feet wet, but you would have been fine as well. So that kind of thing. Safe is a relative issue entirely, and everybody's destiny being what it is, we know one thing for sure. In the end, nobody gets out of the planet alive. So it's kind of a silly question. I don't mean to, denigrate it at all, because it is a legitimate fear. A lot of people think that if they move to such and such a place, they'll be safe, but it just doesn't really work that way.
So it's a karmic destiny kind of thing.
Correct. From my viewpoint, that's how the world works, and I go along with the old Swedes who say you can go and dig a hole and hide in it, and it won't lengthen your life a single damn day.
Second question.
All right. Second question would be, what type of event do you see coming up? I mean, I see all the stuff with Iran. You said you don't see that on the horizon, really, but they're really pounding the drums for that. And they are indeed. I'd just like to get your take on that.
Okay. Yeah, they are indeed ratcheting up the linguistics, and that's part of what we call our building tension period, which breaks now on July 11th. It shifted recently in the last week or two from July 8th, and the break will occur sometime around in the morning of July 11th, excuse me. And what will happen is we'll have a day or two of release language, and then we'll go back to building tension in this day up, day down, 2 days up, 2 days down kind of thing until November. Our data suggests that no matter how much they're ratcheting up the language, there is not a release event, a release of emotion where everybody's will just scream and wail. There won't be any kind of that sort of thing until November 8th in a meaningful fashion. So it is my assumption that if they attack Iran, we would get all kinds of release language that would overwhelm and be around for at least several weeks And we just don't see that until November 8th. And so if the Israelis or the Americans are going to attack Iran, I wouldn't think it was going to occur until November 8th. If it does, we're in really deep problems because it's a 4-day tipping period. And an attack on Iran would not last 4 days. Therefore, my assumption is that if the Israelis attack on November 8th, it'll start World War III, which will last 4 days, and then we'll have 2 months maybe as the rest of us decide who is going to be among the 1.28 billion people that will die that period.
Oh, how do you like this information with your eggs in the morning? The Clif High is great.
Sorry, guys.
The end of the world. So what is this building tension idea? So talk a little bit about that. Linguistics, you see things kind of building and you see things release.
Yeah, there's basically, because we're reductionists by nature as humans, we like to slice and dice in order to understand the world. That's sort of how we started our project. So I started being a programmer. I like to bifurcate into zeros and ones. So I assigned 0 to be building tension and 1 to be release of tension, and that this was the first attempt at categorizing emotions. And I decided that emotions basically work on one of 2 levels relative to linguistics. There are emotions that are tied to words that reference your stomach not tightening up in the sense of anxiety, fear, that kind of thing, or releasing. A lot of our emotions come from our abdomen, oddly enough, because we have a set of neurons around our intestines very much that are exactly identical to the neurons around our brain, and a lot of our emotions are centered there, as the Chinese and other cultures really reference. And so, building tension are those kind of words that reference where it's just a sudden shock. You almost hit that car, and then it's like, whew, and that's the release. Now, on a collective level, we have big periods of where the whole country or the whole planet seems to be going through building tension, and then periods of release tension. A building tension period for those people who were paying attention went from September 9th through September 11th in 2001, and then we hit that tipping point, and then we went into release for a week. I would suspect that if an Israeli attack was going to occur, we would get some release language, as everybody said, they missed me, or, oh, glad it's over, However, we don't see any of that kind of stuff. Now, it is possible my assumptions are really screwed, and we're going to get an attack in July. But if that were the case, then we're going to have many months of up and down building tension and anxiety running all the way up until November, because we don't really have a big release period until November. And that big release period is kind of like what you get when war finally happens. Yes, there's a lot of tension, but then there's also that whole shedding of anxiety of the waiting, if that makes any sense.
Here's an email. Patrick, please ask Clif what he thinks about the Icelandic volcanic eruption and the fact that it happened directly after a major sunspot and coronal eruption of the sun. Also the fact that it seems very close to his ill winds prediction. If you could please ask him if he has seen the massive lightning storms coming out of the volcano and what he thinks about the probable